And also on the governance side, making category management really the cornerstone of how you approach procurement, as well as how you integrate and govern those categories with the business. Christophe talked about category councils. That's a great tool that organizations use to formally manage and govern categories with the business, making sure that it's linked in and tied into your business planning cycles, and that you have the appropriate communication and change management to really drive that across the organization. And that's a lot to think of, but again, think back to the journey where many of you are coming at this in different stages of your development of category management, some very advanced, some maybe just getting started. So you don't tackle all of these at once, but really kind of take it on a year-by-year journey.
So I guess I'm going to build up on what Chris said and talk a little bit about the sustainability of the program and how you make it sustainable. So in our case, what we've done, which was really critical to make it sustainable, was to integrate this into our purchasing organization objectives and make very clear to people that this is a management-driven program. It is not just the flavor of the day or even of the year. In our case, we said, okay, we're going to link this program with your day-to-day objectives, with the purchasing people objectives. So having a clear link between the category management and the day-to-day people's objective. So the other thing is, I think Alpar mentioned that earlier on, but I want to re-highlight this again, is you need to think about how you're going to free up some of the execution work from category managers' plate. So what we've done in our case is we look at the list of what they were doing and see what we could outsource because we had a third-party provider, WNS, not to name it, to do some transactional work. So we have shifted some of those activities that category managers were doing to the third-party provider. And finally, what I would say is it is critical to have the right team in place, and I believe we're going to cover that later on in this interview. You need the right team with the right skills to run the program. So, and I'll conclude with this.
Well, that's a great point, Christophe, and that was exactly what I was going to ask you next. And perhaps, Chris, you could share your thoughts as well. That, what are the key competencies or skills category managers should be looking to develop?
Mm-hmm. I love this question, Tanya, because it really emphasizes category management as a competency, an ongoing skill set that needs to be developed over time. It's not just a process. It's not just a set of tools. Really, just like any function, any discipline within an organization, whether it's a legal profession and finance, it takes ongoing focus and development of key skill sets to really be successful and really be the best category managers that you can be. This is a summary, and we think about all the things that category managers do. There's a lot that category managers are involved in. And what we looked at is we tried to distill out of that, what are the three imperatives that we saw from the best category managers in the world that we've worked with? What are the characteristics? What are the things that they really need to do and they need to do well to be successful in what they do? And we distilled it down into these three areas. I think it's a good foundation then to think about, from these, what are the skill sets that demands. So knowing your stakeholders, and this isn't just, I know Joe, we play basketball together. It's really understanding them from their business, spending time with them, really understanding their business needs, really co-aligning with them in terms of their objectives and yours, developing a strategy, selling your vision to them. So we talk about some of the skill sets that are core to that. You think about consultative skills, you think about collaboration, you think about sales skills, selling your vision, building a strong business case, and being able to influence stakeholders and to align stakeholders to a strategy. The second area, understanding your categories, and this is really getting very deep with your category, getting deep with the data, deeply understanding the external marketplace. Having that sense of true curiosity I think some of the things that I've found with some of the best category managers is that they never seem satisfied. They never end with and get stuck on just thinking that they know everything they need to know about the categories, but are always pushing and trying to find additional information, trying to find additional ways to better understand their categories and better insights. And so I think about the second area, and almost to the point where you as a category manager could give the TED talk on your category. So sometimes that may be a helpful way to think about what's possible in terms of your understanding of a category. And finally, delivering results. It's not that's why we're here in the game, is to really bring that business value and drive execution of that strategy all the way through the cycle so that those results are realized by the business. So having a strong portfolio approach, having a strong execution focus and sense of urgency, and being able to drive that execution and influence all of the parts of the organization that are required to make that a reality. So I think hopefully that gives a good foundation and just how we think about the key activities and the key skill sets for category managers. Christophe, you may have some experiences to share.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I'll build up on what you said. So what I've tried to do is to pick the 4 key ones that I realized in my case. So, I mean, of course, the first one is really the strategic mindset. As we've seen in the beginning of this presentation, your organization is going to need to switch from being 20% strategic to 80% strategic. So, a key skill set for your team of category managers is to have that strategic mindset. Another one, which is also very important, is the analytical skills, because when you think about it, in order to work with category management and build strategies, you're going to have to work from a huge amount of data. You're going to gather data from the market. You're going to gather data from your internal stakeholders, spend data, a lot of data coming from all over. And at some point, you need to analyze those data and come up with something that makes sense in terms of a strategy. So certainly analytical skills are critical for that process. Another one, which is very, very important, is communication skills. So because, I mean, all the time when you do category management, you talk to internal customers, you talk to business people, you talk to a lot of people, and you're going to have to sell your case and your strategy. So actually what we've done during that program at my company is we put together a package of information about how to tell a good story, because that's something that you need to do all the time. And I'll finish on the last one, which I think is also important, is having good networking skills, because there's a lot of collaboration with a lot of people and stakeholders, and understanding how decisions are made by whom and when, it's important, and you can do that through networking skills.
Well, Christophe, at Procurious, we're big promoters of networking, so it's very good to hear you reinforce the importance of that very important business skill for not just advancing category management, but your career. So thank you. Alpa, look, lots of consulting companies come in and simply do the work for you. And I kind of found this disrespectful over time, because it assumes that your team don't have the skills to deliver themselves. And when I ran my procurement consultancy business, I always took the approach of going in and empowering professionals to do the work themselves. So what's Denali's approach on this? You mentioned earlier you have worked with many companies on this long journey. So what's the approach you take?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Tanya. Certainly, again, when I go back to where we came up with this model of operationalizing procurement, I want to take it back to maybe 10 years ago, where the procurement support market was evolving, right? There's the consultants, the strategic consultants. There's a good use for it, but it's mostly to give you advice and strategy on how you can add and build capabilities. And you have your traditional BPO players where, they come in and more do transactional support and lift and shift offshoring, et cetera. There's really a big gap in the market where truly co-creating, co-executing, and focusing on the value-added processes. not giving you decks, not giving you strategy, but together executing and evolving your procurement to add more value. So that's our approach has been always for these clients that I've talked about. They each have a starting maturity point, which is usually low on the lower side, lower category management maturity, a lot of operational work being done by the existing organization, and it's not optimized. So when we look at an operating model where let's separate the role of a category manager, let's define it, and where they can go and, plan the work, build a pipeline, meet with stakeholders, and we can give them support to, again, tools, templates, access to market intelligence. We can give them analytical capabilities, anything they may need to be successful in their role. But the most important part is bandwidth. We've got clients coming to us and say, yeah, we want to send our team to take category management training and go through that journey. And I said, well, would they have the bandwidth? Have you freed up their time? Because if you haven't, then there's no use. That investment is worthless, because they'll go through this training and they go back and continue to be reactive, continue to be operational. We want to shift that. So it starts with leadership saying, yes, we want to invest in category management, and we're going to create dedicated folks. Now, when it comes to our model, it's really co-creation, as I said. One of the other important pieces I'll mention is that it's all about, improving the value of procurement. So if, as an organization, procurement organization today is able to deliver X value, we look at and work together to see how can we make that 2X. And in order to make that 2X, that becomes a joint goal. It's not a WNS Denali goal. It's not an organizational goal. There's one team, and the goal is now 2X. And how do we get there is by collaborating with the category managers, effectively putting them in that role, and then giving them execution capacity to do sourcing, to do contracting, and to be responsive to the business so that it's a well-oiled, well-functioning operational model. So, do we have a consulting model? No. Do we have an outsourcing model? No. I think it's really, capabilities and services, co-integrated and co-delivered to create value with our client teams. That's really what our model has been, and has been working really well over the last years.
And how do you expect that your category management needs will evolve over time? I mean, what's next on your journey, and how do you make sure that you continue the change?
Yeah, another great question. So I think we've seen, again, a lot of organizations, they get excited, they do some investments, they bring in a consulting company, and then, bring in a methodology, but it doesn't pick up, and it doesn't sustain. Once the leadership changes, once the third party goes away, the model hasn't evolved, and that then doesn't sustain. So if we want to talk about, how do we continue to evolve, as Chris said, as Christophe said, it's a journey, and there's no beginning and end. It's, always start with assess where your maturity is today, and then let's talk about the next station. Let's not bet the following station. It's a journey. There's so many things that procurement gets involved to today. I mean, it starts with, again, as simple as rationalizing your supply base could be simple. If you're not as mature, that could be the first thing you do. But then you start addressing some of the compliance areas. Then you can start addressing around innovation and how you drive innovation from your suppliers if they're critically ingrained in your business, and coming up with processes. I mean, today, when you think about the three important value drivers of procurement, that's to do effective sourcing, to do effective contracting, basically once you select the source of supply and how you contract with that supplier, under what terms, and then effectively managing that relationship and the life cycle of that. When I look at, any company, they do a good job for the most part and invest in managing their human resources capital, right? And they have a chief of staff, they have a chief people officer, they have many people, and including people managers, effectively managing that resource pool. When it comes to, supply base, which in some organizations today, it could be as 50% of your workforce could be suppliers, could be third parties. And not having an investment in an infrastructure to effectively manage that pool of resources, those suppliers, definitely suboptimizes the value that can be generated and retained. So your question of what's next, again, this is all in the journey of evolution of category management and procurement, but as companies evolve and mature, effective supplier management is definitely on the radar. Other things, certainly, we're being asked to look at, well, how do we manage tail spend? How do we automate this transactional work? Certainly, there's a lot of processes that can be automated, that can take less of a human time and more of a technology or an automation solution. And it also starts with a category view there. So category managers should be thinking about their categories, because automating a transaction for an IT hardware purchases versus a professional services purchases are very different in nature. So you need to take a category specific approach to how you solve those category specific problems and continue to improve. So we hear a lot of RPA, we hear a lot of automation, a lot of analytics-driven decision-making in the organization, but that all comes with a focused approach in improving your category maturity. And you got to do the basics. You got to start being responsive to the organization, and then put in your plan, as Chris and Christophe said, put in your plan initiatives that take you to the next level. And there's certainly many things to do in terms of how you generate value for the organization.
Christophe, you talked a lot about this journey. Can you add any more color to Alper's comments?
Well, Alpar really did a good job, but what I want to highlight is really that the sustainability of the program is critical, and you need over time just to make sure that this program is going to be sustainable. As I said before, it's not the flavor of the day. It's a journey. It's going to take a long time. And so you really need to go for a continuous optimization of your program based on where you are and your maturity. You have, of course, to fix what's not working, and you have to be pretty open about that so that there is a forum to discuss what's not working and find ways to improve. And also, it's critical to promote what is working, and do all that stuff with a very positive mindset. So I'd say sustainability is really something that is going to be critical over time.
Thank you, Christophe. And really, we're almost at the end of today's discussion. Thank you all for your thoughts. I have just one question for all of you, and really it's for our listeners. What would you recommend to anyone listening today in terms of what steps they can take immediately as individuals to progress on a category management journey and start building that mindset that you've all talked about, and of course to break the Groundhog Day cycle? Chris, maybe if we hear from you first.
Yeah, sure. I think there should be a lot in here that anybody can benefit from, depending on where you are on that journey. So it's going to be different by individual. But if I had to pick one thing, I would say spend more time with your stakeholders. I challenge you to take a look at your calendar. Go look at the last 3 months of your calendar and really look at, with a critical eye, how much time are you truly spending with your stakeholders, really understanding their business and trying to align with them. So take a look at that, see what it reveals. But I think that's really where I would start. Always spend more time with your stakeholders, understanding their business needs.
Christophe?
Yeah, sure. In my case, well, I've been a category manager myself, and I've used the process. So what I want to say to people, it's really fun and rewarding. So it's a fun thing to implement category management. When you build and you implement a strategy over time to support your business, and you really see what it brings, this is really fun. So I want to finish with that fun note.
Alpa, do you have a fun note to finish off on?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think, when whether you're a category manager, you're a procurement operations person, whether you're a CPO, I think the first thing you need to ask yourself and do a gut check on, where do you spend your time? When you look at any week that you have, where does your time go? And so that's number one, understanding where you spend your time. And if it's really reactive, if you're spending time on areas being responsive to the business, just reacting and putting fires out, that tells you that there's a lot of room for improvement and get into that mindset of being proactive, right? So that's number one. Number two is define the opportunity. So yes, definitely meet with your stakeholders and uncover opportunities, but do understand what is the potential value for your own domain, space, category that, you know, if the model worked, that you can deliver. So what is the opportunity? Do an opportunity analysis and assessment of what the value could be. And then you have a business case then to go up, you know, to your management and say, here's the opportunity, here's where I'm spending my time and only touching a piece of that because I don't have the bandwidth and maybe not the right tools and the right approach here. And I want to change that. And because this is a big potential to be not addressing. And to do that, that gives you the business case you need to take action, because these things doesn't happen on its own. Because I've seen many organizations, there's a willingness to change, there is, you know, a good vision and a goal, but it does come with investment in terms of, you know, putting the right level of resources, the tools, and the right, you know, investment and knowledge and training. It all is part of the puzzle. And, you know, so, but you have to take a role in actively promoting that and showing what the value is, and then, you know, pushing the journey of procurement to the next level.